Good evening, it's 7 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order. Kim, would you call the roll, please?
Yes. Commissioner Young?
Here.
Commissioner Keen? Commissioner Miller?
Here.
Commissioner Brink?
Here.
Commissioner Kubal?
Yep. Here.
Chair Gerard?
Here. We're asking if you're able, please stand and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, now we should do the four-way test.
Before I ask for a move to approve the agenda, Kim is filling in for Karen this evening, so if, try to make sure you know who made the motion and the second, and we'll try to keep it clear for you so you don't have to watch the tape 800 times. So with that, the chair is looking for a motion to approve the agenda as presented or with changes as you see fit.
Make a motion that we approve the agenda.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second, it's a non-debatable motion, so all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. Chair is looking for a motion to approve the Planning Commission meeting minutes from February 23rd, 2022.
Mr. Chair, I would make that motion, sir.
I have a motion, do I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion by Susan, a second by Geneva. Any discussion on the motion? Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries unanimous. Next order of business is the Goodview Preserve Concept Plan Review. I believe, Nathan, you're going to be handling this.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm plugging my computer in to share screen, so hopefully this works. All right. So this is a concept plan that should be relatively familiar with the Planning Commission. The applicant here is Centra Homes, the developer. The property is located in the MXR1 zoning district, as you know. I think everyone is familiar with the location of this parcel in the city. In addition to that, the future land use is low to medium density residential. So this concept plan has returned and it's been revised since the Planning Commission last reviewed it. The developer provided a nice list of some of the changes that have been made, and I have summarized those for you in the report. But before I do that, just to kind of lay out some of the context of this development again, this development is in an area where that is surrounded by single-family uses. It is surrounded by some, you can see on the sort of northwest corner of this development is abutting some effectively twin homes or multifamily product there. Can't remember which. So you have it in the context in the city. In addition, there is a large wetland in the middle of this site which drives some of their site design. So some of the changes from the last meeting are that the twin homes have been adjusted such that the only deviation required for that product would be the overall ratio of the twin homes to traditional lots. Generally speaking, the unit mix has shifted more towards a 75 or 80 foot lot width product. Front yard setbacks in this proposed concept plan have all been increased to 30 feet. The 7.5 foot side yard setback is only needed by those lots that are proposed as 65 feet wide. Lots 1 through 9 have had the lot depth increased on those lots. I'll kind of zoom in on those here so we're all on the same page. So those are the lots on the southwest corner of the development. Lots 10 through 18 have had the lot depth increased to 130 feet. So the minimum area for those lots would be just under 8,500. lots 19 through 21 here, abutting wetland 1. They've been shifted away from this wetland a little bit and the lot area increased. And then lots 28 through 44, those lots have been increased in terms of the lot width and area. So those are the ones surrounding this wetland complex in the center of the development. In terms of some of the other things that the developer has shown in some of the submissions with this concept plan is some ideas of landscaping, specifically around the twin home product to help soften the view of the townhomes from the street. So just to kind of jump back to the land use review here, this development is consistent with those land uses, both in the zoning district and in the future land use in the comp plan. A deviation table was provided to you in the staff report that kind of summarizes those deviations that would be required with this most recently revised plan. Parkland dedication, just to summarize here, the parkland that would be dedicated would be 3.4 acres of basically net land, 4.4 acres total if you include those wetlands that are in the park here. That does exceed the parkland requirement of 10% or 3.14 acres. The park and trail proposal here was reviewed by the Parks Commission yesterday, actually, and the commission was favorable to the location of the park, the size of the park, and they also noted the connectivity that the trails would provide from this park to the overall system of the network of trails in the city. So stormwater ponding was also addressed by the developer. In this proposal, there's only 4 stormwater ponds, as it originally started out with many more. I think we've talked about open space a little bit in this plan. One other thing to note on this revised plan is the wetlands do come with a buffer. So there is shown on this plan maybe an approximation of what that buffer could look like. The developer is still ironing out the type of wetland, the buffer that would be needed surrounding it. But that does impact the residential lots, on either around the wetland. And just something to note, making sure that buffers are not basically developed, that the watershed is concerned with making sure that buffers are accommodated. So in terms of staging, this development would be expected in probably a couple phases, although I would defer to the developer on what they think that would look like. And then next steps for this project would be a preliminary PUD and preliminary plat. So that's the review that I had prepared for you formally. If there's any questions for me, I can take those. Otherwise, the developer is here and happy to answer additional questions. One thing I would also note is that we have received a couple notes from the public after the staff report was compiled, and so those have been printed and shared with you this evening here. So. Yeah, can you zoom out? Yeah. So that concludes my presentation. The other email that we received is being handed out.
Okay, questions for staff? Susan?
This is much better. The letters that we received tonight talk about the squishing in what seems to be a lot of houses on a small part of, in a smaller space. And later this evening, when we discuss MXR zoning, I am going to ask the city council for a favor to take a look at something. But folks need to understand that this property could have been legally developed with almost twice as many dwelling units in there. I want to say there's some changes here that I think are very, very good. The trails changes that were made, I think were great. I have little smiley faces on my paper here that indicate to me that, yes, happy joy. The way that the twin homes are designed and where they're put adjacent to, and how that's being done as well. I like using the natural features as the dividing lines. I like the way that Georgia Avenue was changed. I think that that is a good thing. And Paul, I think you were happy to see the elevations that were provided. And
I'll have a comment on them.
I understand. And that there is a mix of lots. There's some smaller lots and there's some larger lots. This is a much better design than we first came up with. I understand the concerns of folks in the city that MXR means a lot more density, and I share that concern, but this is much, much better than it was.
All right, other comments? Nathan, I noticed on there's, for the townhouses, there's no side setback. Don't we have a setback between buildings though, or is that just
That's
handled under
correct.
the permit?
Yeah, that's a good question. So for side yard setbacks in the twin home area would be commonly owned, the area between the
Right.
structures. So in that situation, there is a requirement for a building to building setback, and in code that would be, if I remember correctly, 20 feet from building to building.
Okay, that's what I thought, but I didn't see anything there and I got a little nervous, so, thank you. Other questions?
So
Mike?
Nathan, that's gonna be 10 feet for each one, so it's 20 feet between the buildings?
Yeah, basically that building to building setback is basically, that's why it's 20, because it is effectively 2 lots with 10.
Thank you.
Yep.
Other questions? I believe the applicant is here. If they have any comments, concerns, we ask you please state your name and address for the record.
David Patberg with Central Homes. It's good to be back with you again this evening. I think Nathan did, excuse me, a great job presenting it. He left one question answered about phasing. Our intention at this point is we would grade the entire property all at once, and then utility phases at least 2. We would not do one full phase. Just to be clear, as we've been talking with city engineering, we might need to do a little bit of utility work on both sides of the property to get some utility stuff to work, but roads would go in 2 phases. So otherwise, I think Nathan did a great job presenting. I didn't really have anything else to add.
Are you gonna do north first or south first?
Of phasing,
Yes.
it would be east and west.
Okay.
The one thing is I always need to pause, the western side would be our entrance, but the eastern side, if I remember right, there might need to be a little bit of utility work on that eastern side to go north-south to make a connection. Engineering will finalize that, but that would just be a pipe, street wouldn't go in right away.
So you're wanting to do the twin home area first?
We would bring on the twin home lots and some single-family lots, both. So on the western side, where that road kind of splits, portions of both of those roads would go in.
Thank you.
Other questions for developer? Well, I might as well hit the streetscape since Susan mentioned it. I do appreciate all of the pictures that we have in there. My question for you is, are you picking a design or are you intermixing the various townhome looks that you had?
On the just to
Twin
be clear,
homes.
the twin home
Yes,
elevations,
yes.
is that what you're talking about? We have 2 twin home floor plans, and so we would offer both of those floor plans. We offer multiple elevations of those floor plans, 3 elevations per floor plan, so that gives you a total of 6 elevations. We have, our normal mode of thinking as a builder is we like to give buyers the options, but in this day and age, most buyers are buying spec homes. And so we're kind of right in between doing it both ways in this current stage. But we would alternate not having the same elevations across the street from each other or next to each other with a variety of colors and elevation changes.
So it'll look more single-family-ish than what we've seen in the earlier townhomes where they're all beige for miles.
It's a great question. We have, I'm trying to remember exactly we've not made that decision, but in St. Michael, we're actually building these right now, and I think we have 3 different color options in there. And so this subdivision, when we've done twin homes, we've not done all one. In some of our townhome neighborhoods, we have done all one, but in this one, we've done the variety.
Okay. That's my hope.
And we can do that.
Other questions for the applicant? This is not a public hearing, and I don't see anybody else in attendance that would possibly want to speak to this. So a concept plan does not have a vote. We just provide input to the developer. The hope or the expectation at the end of this now is that you're comfortable with what the city is asking of you, and that you can be successful building a product here with our expectations. So that would be my question from the planning commission is there any other questions we can answer for you? Because the next time we'll see you will be the preliminary plat.
Right. I don't think so. We've had good communication with staff, so I think we wanted to do a public neighborhood meeting prior, after this, prior to preliminary plat. So that'll be our next step moving forward and talking through some. So depending on that input, we might have another modification or 2 based on the neighborhood input. So.
Okay.
With that comment, I would like to maybe understand something. We have, like, what appears to be a little bit of somebody in the neighborhood is upset about this. Do we respond, the planning commission respond to this email at all? And if we don't, for whatever reasons, why? And if we do, who drafts up or crafts a response to these emails?
I don't believe we respond to the email. We would treat it as we would public input at a public hearing, where we take comment in, but we don't necessarily reply.
Okay, so then with what he said, if they're gonna have another opportunity to do a meet and greet with neighbors, could we at least respond that there's gonna be this kind of a thing going on, so he can take it up directly with the people who are in the position of building it?
I have to look this way.
So one thing to note is in the development process, specifically for preliminary plats and planned unit developments, which will be applied for here, there is a mandatory neighborhood meeting requirement, and there's also a public hearing notice requirement. And so these are sent out to those areas surrounding the proposed development, and folks who are, in this area would receive a notice that they have the ability to, number 1, go to the neighborhood meeting, number 2, submit public comment.
Okay, and that's great. But if I'm a person who doesn't understand that that's going to happen, and I lodge my complaint at this point, and I don't get a response, I might be looking for a response. So maybe the response can be, these are the things that are coming up, and that would be the appropriate format for you to bring up your concerns, right? I mean, that's what I'm thinking. Maybe I'm wrong, but, if we're gonna try to, minimize people being angry at the planning commission, which I'm okay with them being angry with, but maybe we can minimize it by saying, this really isn't the forum anymore, the forum is coming, and this is what you need to do.
Susan?
And I tried to address some of those concerns when I spoke earlier.
Yeah, with us.
Yeah,
not-
but
These are all recorded, and
These
they're
are recorded.
broadcast to the public.
Okay,
and they're broadcast. And quite frankly, if folks are not happy with the MXR and the 3 to 6 units per acre, that is something that we need to talk to council about. It is possible, once a comp plan has been done, to revise that comp plan. And with 60% of our developable area at MXR, that may be something that we wish to ask the council to consider. That may be something that the residents, you're gonna be looking at something that is, for 60% of the rest of our properties, maybe twice as dense as this particular development is. I also tried to say that, yes, it's not as squished together as it was originally. The developer has come a long way. And I don't know which version these folks looked at when they made their comments. And I also wanted to say that the developer listened to both us and other neighbors and has made some changes and has made this less dense with more room between buildings. And the way they've laid out some of their park and their open space areas, I think that that will also make it feel a little bit bigger.
Absolutely, and I get all that, but we have an email here dated March 21st. And so from this point forward, I think that that person might at least know in the process where we kind of suggested to them, this is where we're at. If you want to lodge any further concerns, this is the next place to do it. Because we don't know whether they were in on a meeting. We don't know if they were here at a meeting. We don't know any of those things. So we don't know what they know. So let's not worry about what we think they know. Let's just tell them what the next step is.
Okay.
That's all I'm saying. So that the residents feel heard.
Can you make that happen?
I can.
Thank you.
Any other comments?
Nope.
Good luck.
Thank you.
I think the next time we'll see you will be for your preliminary plat. Item 7, Shadow Creek Estates. This is concept plan review. Nathan?
Thank you, Chair. So I'm going to bring this, the most recently received concept plan. This has been revised again, similar to the last one, and since you've seen it last. The last time this was reviewed was in November of 2021. Since that time, the developer, at that meeting, the developer was guided to work with staff to work on further iterations of the development that's proposed here, to work through some key concerns, some of the high-level things that were identified initially when this was first reviewed. So that's what's occurred. So since that time, you see a slightly different alignment of the street in the development here. One of the key concerns was the access to County Road 50 or 202nd. The access is required by Washington County to be in the location of the current driveway for the Shadow Creek stables. So Washington County has that expectation for this development. Another key and unresolved issue is the trails, which I'll cover in a second. And lastly, one of the significant considerations for this particular development is sort of the mix of proposed land uses. So I'm going to jump into that a little bit more. So in this proposed development here, you have sort of what we can maybe look at it in 4 different kind of quadrants. Quadrant 1 would be it's actually called Block 1, and that's in the northeast corner of the development. This is 25 single-family lots. These lots would be proposed with standards at 60-foot lot widths, depth of approximately 135 feet, so a minimum lot area of just over 8,000 square feet. So that would be the land use that's proposed in the northeast corner. And then if we move counterclockwise, we're looking at Block 2 effectively. This is proposed to continue to remain a agricultural homestead, but also it does have a commercial component to it. There would be basically it would continue to be a training facility for horseback riding. Moving on, so Block 3 is in the southwest corner of the development. This would be multifamily housing as proposed by the developer. It's not quite clear yet. I think there's maybe they're going back and forth a little bit on the number of units perhaps, but this will be multifamily somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 units as proposed. And then in the northwest corner of this development would be Outlot A. This would not be developed initially in the first phase of the development, as I understand it. The developer most recently has indicated that these would be 45-foot wide villa lots, so detached villa lots, 45 feet wide.
What was that term? Billow?
Villa,
Okay, thank you.
kind of a nebulous term, villa lot. But anyways, 45 feet wide as proposed. So in terms of how these specifically how these all would meet the current guidance for this property, it appears that only one, the multifamily, would meet the current zoning and future land use guidance for the property. The rest of the land uses proposed would require some amount of amendment to the comp plan and rezoning. So to kind of build on that a little further here, so a comprehensive plan amendment would be required because some of the uses and densities proposed here are not in line with what is currently in the adopted 2040 plan. So in terms of what that process typically looks like, kind of outline that for you in the staff report. It starts with a city intake of a comprehensive plan amendment application. City reviews, and this goes through a city process, first to the Planning Commission and then to City Council. The city has 60 days, but can extend for 120 days in circumstances where additional review is necessary for land use applications. So this could go up to 120 days. And then after that approval, this comprehensive plan amendment would then go to the Met Council for their review. The Met Council has several different processes that may impact how long that review takes, but generally speaking, 90 to 120 days would be common. In terms of if this can be done before entitlements can be granted or how that works, typically the comprehensive plan amendment and rezoning will need to be approved by the city before any entitlements for the property could be granted. For applicants who apply to have their development reviewed concurrent with the comprehensive plan amendment, that would be at their own risk. Livestock requirements, I would just remind the Planning Commission that there are some requirements for agricultural uses, including horses as livestock. So for every one horse, there would need to be 2 grazable acres present. Parkland dedication for this development would look like most cash in lieu entirely, and that would support development of Southview to the north. Okay, so trail connections, I just want to touch on that briefly. This is one issue that has not yet been resolved. Staff have commented on a requirement of a trail connection. There's sort of 2 legs of this, what the city would like to see. The first is actually detailed in the concept plan. That connects the Southview Park to the north to this sidewalk here proposed along what would be called Street A in this concept. The piece that the city staff is looking for specifically is a connection from this crossing of this trail across Street A and then down, connecting through the development to the existing bituminous trail on Goodview. The comment has, the basis for that comment is additional connectivity to the overall city trail system, specifically for some of these parcels that are in kind of the future phases of the development. And then to touch on engineering review, a memo was provided dated October 25th, but ongoing review has taken place as we've received revised versions of this plan. So in terms of next steps for this project, what that would look like, we talked about the comprehensive plan amendment and a rezone, and then this would, after those, have to go through sort of the standard preliminary PD, preliminary plat, and then final of both of those processes. And then I guess the last thing that I have prepared for you is just in the recommendation, just posing a few questions for the Planning Commission. Would the Planning Commission support a project that attempts to integrate these types of uses that are proposed here? Is the planning commission comfortable with changes to zoning and future land use? That's the type of feedback that I think would be helpful at this time. So with that, I can take any questions, and the developer is here to answer questions that you have.
Questions? Susan?
How much of this property is zoned high density and how much is MXR? I'm sorry, I've just forgotten.
Yeah, I'll show you. So the property zoning right now is actually all multifamily. So as you see on the screen here, that's that brown, that's the zoning district. The future land use is split between high-density residential, which is aligned with the multifamily zoning, and mixed use on the western portion of this site. And that's primarily due to its location along 61, a corridor where you would expect maybe some more commercial uses.
The property for sale immediately to the south has been for sale as a commercial node for at least 20 years, at least 20 years. Is there a reason in a way this kind of looks like a camel? Is there a reason that, Nathan, that they've talked to you about that they don't want to make the whole western side of the developable property all multifamily?
I don't know that I could speak to that. I would have to defer to the developer on that answer.
I think the first time I looked at this, it was, you're trying to do an awful lot of things in one place, and they're very, very different things. They're not things that sort of morph and flow into each other. And I understand the desire to sell this property and to develop this property. I absolutely do. But I am, from a planning perspective, and knowing where 61 and where County Road 50, where those plans are going to be and what the properties adjacent to those roads are going to look like, I don't believe that this is the best design at this time. I don't think we're seeing the best design for this.
Thank you. Other comments for staff, questions? Geneva?
Okay, if I'm looking at this correctly, this is pretty close to the airport, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And when I see multi-family housing, which I think we need, I also think of people who use bicycles a lot and use mass transportation or look for park and rides and things like that, along with all the other people that are in there. And when you're driving down 61 on Forest Boulevard, you only have one light, and the place where the crosswalk is not the safest in the world, and I don't see any path going to any place so you could cross 61 if you wanted to get to any of that in this drawing. I see it going someplace else. So those are kind of some things that I would like to incorporate, a way to get to like that park and ride hub with this in mind, and maybe putting some kind of a way to really get people to stop at that light that's a crosswalk, because you're adding a lot of people parking in there, and that's gonna be a lot more traffic and a lot more accidents. That's what I'm thinking.
So you just to clarify your concern, it's regarding crossing 61?
Yes.
Washington County talk about that in their plans?
Nathan talked about it. Eventually something's gonna happen, or a light or a roundabout or something. Other comments? I got some nuts and bolts questions for you, Nathan, so I've got a few of them. Washington County's looking for 770 feet, and this entrance looks like it's about just shy of 600. So they've reached agreement with the developer to allow it there. So they're okay with it being shy of the 770 feet.
My understanding is the county is comfortable with the location that's proposed on this concept.
Okay. Regards to the apartment building, with 104 units, give or take, you would need 200 parking spots? You have 2 spots per
Yes.
apartment,
The
correct?
city's requirement for multifamily housing is two parking stalls per basically unit. One of those, I believe,
Enclosed.
is required to be enclosed.
So we would need a lot more detail and a larger parking lot.
Likely.
I'm retired now, I got plenty of time to count how many parking spots are there. There's not enough. But I just want to make sure that I'm correct, that it's 2 per apartment building, so as they move along on this plan, they have all the garages and everything else that they would need to do.
Correct, good point, and that would drive, the location of parking and how much is required to be provided would drive some site plan design consideration.
In his narrative on this, I believe it's this print, the notes, they talk about this being an entire, just a townhouse development. Are these single-family standalone homes, or are they townhouses?
Are you talking about the 25 single-family lots here?
Right, if you go on the notes on the lower left of this drawing, it talks about them being townhouse units.
Yeah, I believe that would be what those units are. They're being called townhouse units.
But then we end up with a 60-40 split, correct? So only,
In the MXR1 zoning district. So if we were to provide a different zoning district, it may change. The MXR2 and 3 don't have the same ratio requirement.
oh, so there may be an end around this?
Well, yeah, so I think the question is, what do we need to re-guide? If this development were to go in, for example, what would be the most appropriate future land use in these specific areas? And then that would drive which zoning district corresponds. So you could go MXR1, MXR2, MXR3, and those zoning districts have performance standards that vary. I don't know that even the proposal would meet the MXR3 standards. So there would still be deviations required to that district if that were the zoning district.
Well, it's fairly well known, I'm not a fan of spot zoning, so we'll have that discussion a little bit later here. And then my last question, just for now, because I have some for the developer later. In the engineering comments, he talks about lots on block 1 and on block 3, lots 1, 35, and 9. They're not adequately I was having trouble figuring what block I'm on. So I assume there's some kind of driveway issue.
I think the numbering perhaps did change between revisions. I don't know that I don't know if I remember that for a fact, but there was some conversation regarding the location of driveway access.
Mm-hmm.
There is a city standard of, it's either, I think it's 100 feet from Goodview, and so that would drive I think that was the driver of that specific comment.
Okay.
So some lots in the initial proposal would have been, they would have not had access because there was just no, to meet the city standard, you couldn't put a driveway in.
Thank you. That's all for now. Other comments, questions of staff? Mike? By the way,
Excuse me.
welcome back.
Thank you. Sorry for being late. Page 93, they have, you're talking about that, the path going through it, and the red line splits right in the middle. And that'd be the southern route that's red, would be going right through the middle of everyone's backyards. Is that part of the plan, having 2 trails, or is it's up for discretion right now? They don't know which way it's gonna go, or?
Well, so the city comment to the developer was, we would like to see a trail connection
Uh-huh.
from where the cursor is on your screen
Yep.
through the development somehow. It doesn't necessarily matter. These alignments are sort of what you
Okay, so.
literally just slapped them on here, but
You just want a trail going through there somewhere.
Correct.
That's just,
the nature of that comment was to see a connection made to that bituminous trail on Goodview.
Okay.
Susan?
I think the developer knows or has been following some of our other work and knows that 4-foot setbacks and the front setbacks are not something that is going to fly here. I also have some concerns about the narrow lots on the northwest quadrant. They're very narrow, and I grant that they're long and skinny, and there may be folks that like long, skinny houses, but I thoroughly expect for somebody to come to us and say, hi, I need a variance because this just isn't gonna work, and we can't go into this saying, let's go for the variance right off the bat. I think our fire chief would have some serious concerns about 8 feet between buildings. 4 and 4.
Other comments?
Going back to the trail, there are 93 versus the one that you had showed earlier. Is that an earlier one or a later one, or what are we looking at? Referencing that northwest quadrant and where that outlot A is. What is
So the question is about the trail?
No, not the trail itself, but just the referencing the one here was different, the outlot A. I was just looking at the difference between the one that we were actually looking at before. What was the timing on these two? Because they look different. Go back to the one that you were at before, right there.
Here.
Am I just not seeing it right, or?
No, you are right. So that's a good distinction between these two plans. So what you're seeing in this annotated version does not account for basically the change between this outlot A and this is an older plan. The one that you see here with the skinnier lots, the
Okay,
45 feet, this is the newer one.
Perfect, okay, I just want to make
Yep.
sure that was one that
Yep.
was,
The comment is obviously still the same regarding trails, but yes, you're correct.
thank you.
Other comments? All right, I believe the developer's here. We'd ask you to state your name and address for the record, please. Spend a few minutes maybe explaining the changes in your mind, and then I'm sure we'll have questions for you. So
My name's
welcome.
Todd Christensen, thank you. Todd Christensen, 7800 Pearson Way, Fridley. I'm here with, representing the product that you see before you. I am the developer. I do have a partner who wasn't able to be here tonight, but I guess I'd like to, I look at it kind of the same way Nathan does in 4 different areas, and I kind of feel like if we can resolve a couple of these areas, at least, at this time in our minds, that we can move forward. The farm area, this is a little different for me this time because I've never done a development where I'm gonna live there. So my wife and I have 8 grandchildren here in Forest Lake, and our plan is to move into the farm and reside there and continue with the business, which is gonna require Mary and I coming in and talking about, the business itself and the whole farm and the horses. And I feel like that's just a whole nother subject, that the business and the number of horses and all those kinds of things, to me, that's outside of what I'm doing here today. But it does relate to the trail, and I'll kind of get back to that in a little bit. But on the northeast corner up there, we enlarged the lots along Goodview to get to the city's requirement of 100 foot to the driveways from the edge of bituminous. I did, however, go down the street and physically measure every driveway along Goodview, and I got driveways from 42 feet, and the biggest one was the closest to the high school, which was 82 feet. So nobody along Goodview is at 100 feet or even close, but we're gonna be there. So we made that change. We also had the trail going between 2 lots off the corner there up to the park, and the city came back and said they wanted the trail along the ditch there which is 500 and some feet, which is quite a bit longer than what we anticipated, and also goes through the people's backyards. I am talking to the adjacent property owner because his fence for the well guys there is actually quite a bit away from the ditch, and there's a possibility that I might be able to come up that side, buy a little chunk from him and get out of the people's backyards. Because I'm just not a big fan of, you know, you got a sidewalk out front and a trail in the back. I mean, how much do you need? And it just inviting a lot of people and a lot of privacy issues, and I think security, and so I'm a little bit torn on the whole trail thing. I agreed to do that up the ditch there. The city said they would like to see that there because they want to be able to maintain the ditch, which hasn't been maintained, I don't think, ever. It's got 50-foot trees in the middle of it. Now with the developments in the area, it doesn't even carry water. There's never standing water in that ditch. But that being said, I agreed to build that trail. But with the farm piece not being developed right now, and maybe never, or for a long time, where you and I, none of us will be here, I just think it's a real hardship to put that trail right along that wetland, right next to the horses, inviting people to interact, because there will be some kind of horses there at some point. And I just find that really intrusive. I also really just kind of want to understand who's going to use the trail, because there's nobody coming up from the south. We got major sidewalk running along the road north and south, and that was the other thing that we agreed to. The city wants us to complete that entire road as part of phase 1 up there in the northeast corner. We agreed to do that. So with that in mind, I tried to I did a lot of different concepts I know I'm jumping around a little bit here, but I did a lot of different concepts on the northwest corner. I had fourplexes, I did a lot of different designs. When I sat with city staff, one of the things that they came up with was, that you don't have a lot of is these small villa homes, slab on grade, 35 feet wide, 5-foot side yard setbacks, not 4, for people to occupy. So that's what I came up with to kind of fit that solution. Actually, my friend David Patberg, who was just here, are building those in Coon Rapids right now. And they're actually quite cute. They're actually building them in 2 stories. So I've worked with them before, and so I thought this might be a good solution for that. I'm open to suggestions on that corner. One of the things that I kind of was hoping to talk to Nathan a little bit more about was, the mixed use and the application for the to amend the comprehensive plan. And I really kind of thought that maybe, that the density on those 10 acres would combine, with 104 units in the apartment, and then 28 units, we'd be at like 140, it's 10 acres, so we'd be under the 15 units an acre. So would that not work for the comp plan, that we wouldn't have to?
When we're looking at the comp plan and how we might have to amend it, we have to consider also the land use. So not only are we looking at densities, we're looking at the land uses proposed. The high density residential future land use has a specific goal of multifamily. We might have to consider a different future land use designation for areas that are not, with some uncertainty in terms of what's being proposed in Lot A and potentially the future of this farmstead property. It's difficult to assign a future land use or kind of clarify or think about how we might re-guide some of this area.
I think what would be, helpful for us is to know that, the piece in the northeast corner looks acceptable. The apartment piece looks acceptable. If we need to go to work on that northwest corner, I'm certainly happy to keep working with city staff on that. The road is pretty locked in. I have to tell you that it's been, we've just had many discussions with the county highway department, city engineer's office, city staff regarding this entrance. And to answer your question earlier, there's a main trail going along 202nd to provide people to go across that intersection. There's a crosswalk there. County highway department anticipates a stoplight at some point. But the real issue on that entrance was, again, a hardship for the farm. The state guidelines there's thresholds for cars per day. And if you have over 6,000 cars a day, the state wants you to be 660 feet from the stop sign. If it's under 5,500 cars a day, the state wants it to be, it can be 300 feet. So the county highway department looked up the usage, it's 2,250 cars. And I still have to be 660 feet, which puts it right in front of the house, creates a real hardship, takes away some of the parking for the customers. And, you know, unhappily we did it. So it is where it's gonna be. There's no more discussion about that. They just put the hammer down and said it's gotta be 660, so that's what it is. So we gotta live with that. And then building that road all the way up to the northeast, you know, we met with the city and agreed to do that and build that road. So I really just, you know, for us going forward, I just need to know where we sit on that northeast corner and where we sit on the apartments. And if you don't like what you see in the northwest corner, then we'll have to do something else there, I guess. So I guess I would be interested in your comments on that.
Commissioners, comments? Mike?
That trail in the northwest corner comes down to Road A. And then it crosses Road A and goes out to Goodview, correct?
Yep.
Is there any way to just stop it at Road A and make the sidewalk along Road A wider for a trail, and it'll come out down on County Road 50, Washington County 50? Then you're not going out to Goodview at all. 'Cause I know around town here, there's a lot of trails that are right next to the road.
The north-south road proposed there has a 5-foot wide concrete sidewalk. You know, could it be 6? Sure. You know, but,
I'm just bringing it up to everybody
yeah,
here.
I mean, that's certainly a consideration.
The whole northeast corner going through backyards and future use, which might not ever happen in our lifetime. That road will be put in.
Yep.
And it'll be, to me, it seems like an easy maintaining, something that's right next to the road.
Our sidewalk requirement, I believe, is 6 feet width.
Is it
and
6?
Our trails are 10-foot widths. So it'd be quite a bit in the front yards there to get to that wider. Am I correct on those two numbers? Thank you. Other comments? Susan?
I guess I take exception to the hardship perception, because
Which hardship are you talking about?
the road and the distance and some of the other things. This is property that you purchased knowing that it had specific zoning requirements. And also knowing that it's really hard for a city to look at zoning and say, hi, we're going to have a large multi-unit building immediately adjacent to an animal facility. I've got horses. I know what even 3 or 4 of them are going to be, and it's a challenge. Also, the fact that there would be folks interacting with horses, well, they do that now as they walk down Goodview, and the horses are out in that east pasture and all along, and the neighbors that are on the north edge when horses are down there, they're feeding them over the fence. Horses are an attractive nuisance. That's the
Yeah, and
official
again,
term.
I'm not here to argue that point. Actually, those pastures are quite a ways from the sidewalk. I don't know if there's much interaction there, but again, I feel like the whole farmstead issue is an issue all by itself. It's a business and should be addressed separately.
Okay. The other comment I have is that asking to really piecemeal this thing out is going to be a challenge for us, because the pieces will eventually have to fit together in some sort of coherent whole.
Well, you know, I've done planning all my life, and what you have here is a flow. You have a multi-housing, project in the corner. You got some higher density single family into some lower density single family as you move away from the highway. So there is a flow here.
I accept that you feel that way. So,
And again, I'm open to, you know, I guess I'm open to hear what you guys have to say about the, you know, that northwest corner. I mean, is it something that, you know, you wanna see fourplexes in there, you wanna see more density? Cause I was going for more density, I can go for less, I mean, I'm open to that, but I'm not hearing any suggestions.
If it was me, I would say that whole strip on 61 would be apartments.
that was
Back-
the long-term zoning.
Yeah, that's a long, backing up housing on the 61, I'm not a huge fan of that.
Yeah, and
Now-
we would obviously do some berming, and you can tell those homes are a long ways from 61. And I'm not opposed to doing more apartment buildings, you know. That wasn't what I was hearing the last time I was here. I didn't feel that was really where we were going, so I didn't go that direction. I can certainly do that.
To me, that's my opinion, I'm one out of,
I mean, if that's what you guys think, then, you know, I'm more than happy to look at that approach.
you know, because
And what does that do for our comprehensive plan amendment, Nathan?
There's still gonna be a comprehensive plan
Okay.
amendment required.
Okay.
it'll take care of the western parcel, correct?
Yeah, you could put
We
three
need to look at the
buildings in there.
density that would be proposed. It's possible that if you did more apartments up here, I'm not saying that this is gonna be,
Yeah.
I guess I'm maybe thinking out loud on this. If you do more apartments in Outlot A, you may still exceed the density that's allowed in the mixed-use future land use area. So to do it correctly, you may actually need to re-guide that portion to high-density residential. I think we just really need to review a concept.
But the existing zoning, if I remember right, for that whole western half is the
That's correct, you're right.
is the multifamily, and so that
Yes.
zoning wouldn't
Exists.
have to change if the whole western half were apartment buildings.
Right, so the current zoning is multifamily.
You wouldn't need a comp plan revision for that.
For that area, we would look at the density proposed. And
Yeah.
if it's higher than what's allowed in the current future land use designation, then we might have to look at that. But again, I think
Wouldn't
it's
the
hard to
next-
comment on that further without having a,
Got it.
It's a lot higher than MXR.
With what Susan commented on there, the mixed use, or the current zoning, that's 10 to 15 units an acre? Or is it 15 to 20?
It's
You
the
know,
I
higher.
believe the multifamily zoning district currently as written, I think it's 10 to 15. That is something that does not align with the comprehensive plan that would have to be amended.
Well, I'm confused.
So am I.
Yeah, I'll show you.
No, but I mean, if we fall within the current zoning, then we don't need I mean, I guess I'm trying to avoid that if we can.
You cannot avoid a comprehensive plan amendment with what you're showing here.
Not with what I'm showing, but if it was all apartments.
You are not gonna do apartments in this quadrant, are you?
You can. Oh, no, not up there, no, but we're
Well,
just
then you
talking
need a
about the
comp
west,
plan amendment.
we're just talking about the west 10 acres right
And
now.
The
Is it-
zoning for that is split. The entire property is not the same code.
Okay.
Right,
So the future land use for this area, mixed use here,
and that's
on
what,
this side of the site,
Uh-huh.
high density residential here, that's the guided land use.
okay, so the mixed.
Hold on.
Go ahead.
The current zoning district is multifamily for this whole area. So it's possible, so you could potentially, if you were gonna propose a commercial use, for example, on the 61 corridor, you could rezone it and meet the intent of the comp plan. That's not what's being proposed here, but I'm just saying that's possible.
Is that due to not having our zoning, for lack of a better term, line up with the new comp plan?
Yeah, so if we were going to your point, if we were going to rezone this area to meet the intent of the comprehensive plan, we might consider rezoning this as this western portion as general mixed use. That would allow for a mixture of multifamily or commercial, but I think the question is does the current district match the zoning, the future land use, yes.
It's gonna be a whole lot easier to get something to the Met Council that they would be happy with if we said, we are going to be rezoning this to the future land use.
Yes.
And that's, for Forest Lake, super high density for that whole western side.
So that 10 acres becomes fairly easy in a sense if it all goes apartment. But we still have
Right.
the other, what is it, 30 acres, 25 acres? I forget how much the
Well,
other
it's a
parcel
total
is.
piece is 33, but, so,
So 23 is the right parcel?
yes. Plus or minus.
Yeah, but we're not gonna hit near there with single family, right?
So,
So that's what the
that's, the real struggle on the amendment would be the northeast corner, that's the single-family lots.
The question is, this, basically the entire east side of the development. It needs to be reviewed, and I fully expect the Met Council would review it as one site.
Right. Yep. So, just stay with me here for a second, because I'm just trying to sort this out, and I'm a little confused here, and I'd like to make it as smooth as possible, and I have some flexibility. So you're telling me in the northeast corner that if I came in with a multifamily, like fourplexes and things, something like that would fall within this current zoning that it's in now, and we could avoid all of that?
The zoning and the guidance for the entire east part of this site is multifamily.
So we could do that, and we would be fine. Is that?
Potentially,
I mean, I thought
again,
we wanted single family there because we were backing up the single family, and, I thought we could get some more density with smaller lots, and
we're reviewing the concept that was submitted to us.
I understand. I'm
So,
just asking the question. And I'm satisfied with everything I've got from you guys on the west side. I think I know what I can do there. And I guess I'm just wondering, on the northeast corner, is there some other direction that I should be taking to avoid a comprehensive amendment plan? Amendment to the comprehensive plan? And maybe, Nathan, that's for discussion for us later.
I don't think I can really comment on that right now. I haven't reviewed for that.
Yeah, that's fine.
so if you want to build single family, so you're talking about standalone single family homes,
Correct.
and so they're
Yes.
not townhomes.
Correct. No association.
No, so okay. So I think about as small as we've gone is 65 wide. When you're down at-
65 feet, I think, and I've got 60s in there. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
And there's a bunch of 60-foot
Yep.
wide lots in there right now.
Yeah, and they'll
Yeah.
have to go up to at least 65.
Okay.
That's about the floor of where we are in
Okay.
somewhat agreement on.
Well, yeah, and I've seen some of those other plans come through. We just hadn't had that comment yet, so that's a new comment for us.
The developer who was here right before you, none of his are a minimum of 65.
Yeah,
And his latest plan is, he's actually increased his number of 75s and 80s.
yeah. And we have some 80s in here and some 90s as well. And there's some 70s in there too. But I understand where you're at.
And, and that developer's done a pretty nice job of getting the lot sizes kind of where we are moving towards.
Mhm.
So it'd be something to take a look at. Otherwise, to me, having houses up there is fine as long as we can get the width a little more to where, width and the depth more to where we are comfortable with.
Okay. All right.
But we'd still have to make.
And then I'm sorry, in closing, I guess, the trail thing, I mean, again, it's not that we're opposed to never doing it, it's just that it's just a lot to take on right now, and I don't know if it's that necessary at this point, so that's something that maybe would be discussed more at preliminary plat.
Well, by then you already got pretty
Right.
serious money into it.
Well, I mean, it doesn't take much to drop the, you know, the plans for the trail. I'm expecting, like every other project I've ever done, that we'll have, you know, when I finally do reach preliminary plat approval, there'll be conditions. That's typically where it sits, but, go ahead.
One of the mistakes that we've made over the last 60 years has been not enough sidewalks and not enough trails.
Sure.
I don't believe that we're letting this pendulum swing too far the other way.
Mm-hmm.
I would not expect us to back off the trail,
Yeah,
all right? Just
yeah.
don't-
And that's fine.
don't-
And, you know, we can agree to disagree.
Absolutely.
And I can take it to council once we get through preliminary plat. I mean, once we get through here, I mean, that can be an issue that's discussed at council and
That's right.
resolved at that point.
Absolutely.
You know, that would be my intention.
Okay.
Okay.
I think that's fair. Otherwise, I think that's all I have.
So is your intention then that basically where the farm is, all the way up to kind of where they talked about bringing the trail or the back end of those houses on the cul-de-sac? Is that the end of your development and this whole rest is just gonna be the farm for now?
Yes, we'll build the road all the way up to the northeast corner. We'll probably, you know, we'll have a plan for the west side, so we'll be able to drop off utilities at the proper locations. So we won't have to tear the road up again. Hopefully that'll work in the future. But I will come back with a different concept on the apartments for the west. And the road kind of has to stay where it is, pretty much, you know.
Mhm.
There's really not much we can do with the road. And I even, you know, I mean, I could come back with a preliminary plat of 3 outlots, the road, and the northeast corner. And come back with, you know, then all the plans for the apartments. I mean, I could break it into 2 preliminary plats, you know what I mean? I could come in and just plat outlots for those 3 outlots. And then come back later. Or actually 2 outlots, there'll only be 2, because we're gonna if we do the whole west side, it would just be 1 big outlot,
I would defer to staff for
so.
their thoughts
Yeah.
about that.
How many horses do you have?
Right now, there is 18 to 20 horses that are boarded there. And then they have 10 that they use for training children and adults on actual basics of riding.
So
There's
roughly
like
30?
28 to 30, yep.
And how many acres do we need for horses?
It's not even close.
Unless you are a
It's not
feedlot,
even close.
all right? And you may want to get licensed as a feedlot. You need, horses need 2 acres per horse, and that is 2 acres of pasture.
So we're way short.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but
I think
that's
we-
between him and Washington County.
Yeah, I mean, it's a business, so we'll be asking for some kind of
And
variance.
do we have a conditional use permit there?
No.
They'll-
This has been there a very, 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 very long time.
Right, because it's not zoned for it.
Correct,
1908.
yeah. So,
Actually, the horses all reside right here. The horses are all right
So
in
are we
this
saying
area
this
here
is
in
grandfathered in,
quad.
is that
They
the-
don't pasture anywhere
can't
else
be
on the
changed.
property. Their pens
As
are all
long as
there,
it
as
is
you
modified,
probably
so
know.
a driveway, road, is that modification? Ditch, right? So grandfathered in, meaning, nothing can change.
Yeah,
So when you start modifying this property, doesn't that change?
yeah.
Doesn't that mean the
Yeah,
business goes away?
It might have to, and we're prepared for that, if that's what happens. We're obviously looking for something in, maybe in the middle. I mean, there's a full-time groundskeeper, or I don't know what you call him even. What do you call the guy who takes care of the horses?
that would be you've got an on-site trainer.
Yeah, there you go. And he, you know, takes care of the horses every day, and it's actually a very clean farm and very well kept up. They just re-roofed all the buildings. Actually, we've talked to the Washington County Historical Society because of the age of the house and its original condition, original wood. And so, our plan is to go in and, you know, dress it up a little bit, dress up the property, because it hasn't been very well kept outside, around the house area there. Just get things cleaned up and,
So how, I'm confused, how is that a county issue, not a city issue?
It's the county that's been doing the ag. When folks near me have had an excess number of horses, it has been the county that has come knocking. But just remember that that property has been doing all of its manure spreading on that west side.
Yeah, we have plans to haul it off, yeah. Because we want to make it right for my oldest grandson's graduation party this year.
Other comments for the developer? And while you're looking at the apartment side, look at the parking pretty heavily, because,
Yeah, and I was gonna comment on that. There's underground parking under both buildings, so there is adequate parking for those two buildings on that site. So they have underground, I think there's 36 underground parking stalls under each building. And those are 52-unit buildings with a pool on the top and a courtyard up on top, and I guess a dog walking area, which seems a little unusual. I wouldn't want them to jump off, but there's a dog walking area up there too as well. So it's a really nice building. I've provided the staff with the construction plans, and our only thoughts with the apartment is to expand the building east-west. It's a 3-story building, and maybe add a few units that way. But now with the new design, I'm probably gonna shift things around a little bit and try to make it a little more attractive rather than, just square it off like that, and maybe have some common area or something as well.
And you know that area's wet.
We did soil borings there. We didn't hit water till we got to 15 feet. So the water table's good. That's what we were concerned about with the underground parking.
Yeah, that's why I brought it up.
We didn't want the cars floating. But yeah, we were surprised. We thought that we would hit water sooner than that, but it's down quite a bit.
so, will we see you next with another concept, or do you think you're gonna go right to the preliminary?
I'm probably gonna go right to preliminary.
It-
I still feel pretty confident that we can agree to something, and if we've gotta make some changes, we'll make them, at
Okay.
that point. But I think we wanna get going. We have, builders anxious to get in there and build, and we wanna get some construction, and we wanna get the roads in this year. So we anticipate, and the apartment developer would like to get at least one building in the ground, so he wants to get going as well. All
So
right?
it's up to you. Be happy to see another concept if you so desire,
Yeah, well, and we may go that route too,
because it's a non-binding, as you know.
yeah.
But what we really want to do with the developers, as you were here at the earlier one,
Yeah.
we want to get it so you can be successful and the city's got a nice development.
Yeah.
That's what we're really all
Well,
here
and like I
for.
said, my wife and I are planning on living there, so we wanted to have a nice development, and that's what we're trying to accomplish, and so I think we can get there. Thanks for your time.
This is not a public hearing, but we have some guests here. Did you want to comment on this project?
We're just supporting him.
Oh,
Sorry.
all righty.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Nathan, I'll talk to you later.
Okay, we move to number 8, Parkland Dedication, try this again, Paul. Parkland Dedication Ordinance Amendment. I'm not sure who's presenting it. This you, Nathan?
I can take this one. At least to start. So this is, this staff report was written to summarize some changes that we expect the city attorney to put forward here with the Parkland Dedication Ordinance. Specifically, this is in reaction to kind of 2 things that are going on at the state level right now. One is some case law that is happening as we speak, basically. The city of Burnsville was actually sued by a developer, and so there are expected to be some changes that come to the city's ordinance in order to protect the city from future litigation. The other thing is there is some development at the state level with some bills that are currently being reviewed by the legislature. So the language in this ordinance is meant to basically protect the city moving forward. Specifically, how it would do that is to react to that recent Burnsville case. That would require the city on an individual basis during each development review to make a determination that the development that's being proposed creates a certain demand on the city's park system, and thus the city has the ability or can require that right now with 10% of the land to be dedicated. So the change here is simply it will be part of the development review process. We will have to, again, we'll have to review these developments on a case-by-case basis to justify requiring either parkland dedication or justify the city's fees. It would streamline the language in this particular, the Parkland Dedication ordinance. There's some redundant language in there already or existing. In addition, we would have to clarify the calculation of cash in lieu specifically. So those are the things that would change. What would not change is the the required percentage of parkland, which in the current ordinance is 10% of residential properties and 5% of commercial or industrial. The city's unit fee also, we would not be proposing to change that, and the city, as part of this process, was actually looking at increasing the unit fee for parkland dedication. So that does, the statutory requirements for cash in lieu calculation and the per unit fee are still being discussed at the staff level of how that's gonna kind of work out. But that's sort of a high-level overview of what's being proposed here in the draft ordinance. And I should also say the draft ordinance that's included with your packet here has actually changed. I just today received a red line copy of the draft ordinance that's been amended. So it's not the final iteration of it, but wanted to put this in front of the Planning Commission just so you know that this is in process. So I can take any questions.
Susan?
A couple of things. I am hoping that you're not going to make any changes until the case, the Burnsville case, is not only decided, but appeals have been done. And bless their hearts, but there's an awful lot of legislation that is being proposed that is going absolutely nowhere this session, just nowhere. I have a couple of concerns with the language that you're talking about. Conduct an individualized determination of the amount of land needed and demonstrate an essential nexus between the land dedication or cash fee and the purpose sought to be achieved. So we say that we think that X number of houses will need Y number of parkland. And the developer says, no, I'm intended, they're all gonna be over 70, and they're not going to want any parkland, so you don't have the purpose to be achieved. You want people to play outside, and these folks aren't gonna play outside, so there's no individualized determination here. I'm really concerned about that language and how folks are going to play with it, no pun intended, to the detriment of the city. That trying to be that specific, again, well, we want the dollars for a tot lot and a soccer field. Well, nobody under 15 is going to be able to live here. So forget your tot lot. I'm just worried that that language is going to cause you more trouble than your existing language.
And you should be worried, but what we're seeing is the way we've administrated the fee prior to today, or may not always be correct.
I realize it's a different state, but I was at a conference Monday and Tuesday in which when a development comes to the city, the developer has to put into an escrow account the amount of money for future snowplows needed for the extra road, the additional fire protection needed, and right down to the number of garbage trucks that would be needed as a portion, and that money is required up front. And I didn't bring it tonight, but I have the citation. Oh my God, that would be so nice.
It would be nice. But we are trying to protect the dedication ordinance and make it correct and make sure that we don't go backwards on funding or parkland. Nathan mentioned the state, as you pointed out, not all bills get passed. The current proposed legislation is to mandate a 5% contribution instead of the 10% that we have now. We've contacted the legislators in this area about that. But working with our fine attorneys, they have some suggestions on how we need to arrange the possibly new fee. We are looking at a $3,500 fee instead of the $2,500 fee. So we still have a lot of work to do. This is really preliminary. I understand your concern. We also are starting to, got a grant from the county to update the park master plan. And the intent is in there to put language in that helps us make our case for increased parkland. So we're doing what we can. It's an ongoing process. It's not going to be done in a week or two. So we've got a little bit of way to go, and probably I'd like to see what the legislature does as well. And like you say, the court case. So
That language just scared me.
So I'm really confused, but that's not unusual. But is the issue that before us that the amount that you need land or not, or the fee? And if they say you don't need land, you don't need a fee. Is that kind of what they're saying?
kind of both. It's really both.
Okay.
How do you, when you ask a developer for land and or a contribution or a combination, you have to pretty much state the reason and make your case that you have the need to expand parkland or collect funds to develop parkland. And some of that does go by population, but also, these days, those 70-year-olds will go out and use the park. So I don't think age will be an issue. I just think it's resources of how, in our park master plan and even the comp plan, we identify parkland and how much is it going to need. So I'm sure we will be falling back on the updated park plan, but also the comp plan that identifies acreage for the population that we anticipate to be sooner or later.
Other questions, comments? Kevin?
In 152-0 or .091, it talks about the percentages, the net area and that sort of stuff. Is that how you determine how much land a developer would do?
Currently, how we determine that, yes. It's
Okay.
10% of the net developable land, which takes out the streets, takes out the wetlands and things like that.
Are we talking about changing that? No, leaving
Hope
that.
not, no. We'd
Okay.
like to keep that 10%.
And then the flat fee amount that you mentioned, the 3,500, what determined that?
Actually comparable to some of our neighbors.
Okay.
That's not out of
Just a
line.
random fee?
Well, the fee, wherever the fee was to begin with, and I don't know who came
Yeah.
up with it, it was at $2,500. We did a quick lookup of fees around us. The most 3,500, sometimes 4,000. We thought 3,500 is a good mix. It's similar to our whack and sack fees of $3,600 for that. So trying to make it a true impact fee and make it comprehensive with the rest of the communities around us, but also with our other fees that hit development.
And that doesn't have to be in the amendment?
Oh, it'll have to be changed, absolutely, it'll
Or
have
not,
to be
okay.
changed.
Because I don't see anything in-
The specific amount of the fee would actually be in the city's fee schedule.
Oh,
So if that unit fee ever were to change, the only
Right.
change would need to occur in the fee schedule and not within the ordinance itself.
Yeah, right now, it's stated in the land development ordinance, so we take it out and say, see this fee schedule, so that if,
Oh, I
instead
see
of
that,
having
okay.
to change the fee,
35.03.
land ordinance all the time, we just
Okay.
change the fee schedule like we do every year,
Yep,
depending on what adjustments we need to make for all city fees.
okay.
Kevin, for example, that park between 61 and Goodview,
Yeah.
the land was there. The city never had any money to do anything with it. And that's been a problem for the city. The people expect that if there's a hunk of land that we call a park, that there should be at least a bench there. Bird feeder, water, something.
Access.
Trails, I
Something.
mean, trails too, I mean,
Yeah,
to take the last gentleman's development and not to get into that a little bit, but, we requested the trail that follows the ditch line. Well, what's on the north part of that ditch line? That's a park. There's
Right.
really not a great way to get to the park. That's why if you come off of Goodview and follow the ditch line, which is diagonal and then goes up, even though it may go back past people's backyards, that's really the entrance to that park, and to be able to, the people being able to use it is really handicapped because of a very small entrance on the north, wherever it is up there, so.
Right.
So that would be one of the justifications that we'd have to this development, to say, here's what we need, why we need to put your trails on, you need to pay for it, why we need parkland, so then when all the kids that go into the apartment, that we can put structures and ball fields or whatever else we want to put up in that park.
Other comments? Otherwise, we'll move on, unless you have something else for us on this issue?
No, there's still a lot of work on staff side to do, so as soon as we get that finished.
Well, thank you for the initial enlightenment. We'll move on then to number 10, PUD versus by right zoning. Nathan?
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so this staff report is in front of the Planning Commission sort of as a continuation or a branch or tangent from the MXR1 discussion. Where that discussion left was, if we're going to have the same standards in the MXR1 and we're going to have developments come in and propose to do less, we're going to have to process those through planned unit development. And so the reason this is, the attached memo was requested from the city attorney was to help the Planning Commission to understand the limits of planned unit developments and potentially, when they maybe should not be used, and sort of what's the best practice for cities. And so really that's what's been kind of contemplated here in the staff report. I'll go over it very briefly and then maybe just stand for questions. So included the lot district standards that are currently in the MXR1. We include the purpose here in of the planned unit development ordinance, really provide flexibility where there's a benefit to the public. The benefits that are received are the benefits that can be received or considered by the city are established in this ordinance. Efficient use of land, preservation of open space and natural resources, a benefit from new design or technology, encouraging basically land use and density that promotes higher standards, and lastly, to help develop really complex sites. Those are really the benefits that the city gets from planned unit developments. One of the things that I noted here in my sort of planning assessment was one of the things that can be a challenge to navigate is in some cases where it's hard to communicate to developers what the city is looking for, because if every development is reviewed as a planned unit development, they're all reacted to differently on a case-by-case basis, so it can be sometimes hard to communicate what the commission and the council are looking for in some cases. So, and then lastly, again, the city attorney did provide that memo to you, and I guess that's all I had really formally prepared. Happy to take any questions.
Susan?
Okay. We're in this mill of a hess because there was a city council that, after the planning commission and a citizens advisory group had spent a great deal of time and effort developing the 2040 plan, agreeing on areas and densities and land uses, sent the final product to that particular city council for its final approval. That night, that city council turned 60% of the city's developable land area MXR. Just bam. No rhyme, no reason, bam. And it got shipped to the Met Council and got shipped as final, and I know that Bolton Mink is going to remember having to redo tables literally almost overnight to try and get that submission done. And it has created a problem for us because that is not the vision for the city that the folks that were part of the engagement on developing that comp plan and the planning commission at that time had discussed and were looking for at the city. So one of the things that I would very much like for the city council, to look at, and I'll admit I've talked to a couple of folks, is it really the vision of Forest Lake to have the vast majority of our housing be MXR1? Means the areas around Tanner's Brook. This is the whole freaking ball of wax that we have left. And if we go in compliance with what the attorney is talking to us, we will not have any flexibility to say, no, we don't like what I'm seeing on 61 in the Centerville Hugo, the really smashed together stuff. That is not what many people consider the vision of what they expect in Forest Lake. The letters that we received tonight, quite frankly, the developments could have been much more dense and compact, going strictly with the MXR zoning. And so I have a real concern that we're going to see lots more of this, and it will be more dense and less and less with what many folks think of when they think of, this is the Forest Lake that I want to live in.
Okay, I have a question, and maybe you guys can shed some clarity on this. If the comprehensive plan was it submitted with different people involved with that MX1 vision in mind? Or did it get submitted incorrectly and now we have to deal with something that was submitted and it looks like what the city wants, but really isn't?
The latter. The city council at the time made the change. I don't think it was unanimous, but they made that change, and it was not sent back to the planning commission to review that change. It was not provided, no engagement with that change was provided to any of the folks.
Okay, so can now,
But it wasn't an error,
no,
because the city council voted on it and
Okay.
said, this is.
so
what we-
then can it be amended, the
Any-
comprehensive
yes.
plan be amended to get it back to what we're kind of suggesting that most people want? And again, is it what most people want or most people who are actively on this want? That's part of what I'm not sure of, because sometimes I feel like I'm hearing people speaking for themselves and with maybe people that they're familiar with, but not necessarily the broad spectrum of the city. And because I am not familiar with the broad spectrum of the city, I get a little concerned because I don't know who we is and who decided was. And I don't know, so there might be a good portion of this city that is totally in favor of MX1 and the way it sits. That's what I'm not sure of.
I don't think that as we've looked at some of the developments that are happening under MXR, we have received any comments saying, darn, you should be holding them to the strict MXR standards, I want this development denser. But I will tell you that when we had meetings, and it is hard to get people to meetings in Forest Lake, when we had meetings during the comprehensive plan development, the people that showed up to those meetings were not in favor of large, quite dense. I mean, no. Chairman, these aren't the lots, the city lots that you grew up with, even our MXR1s. But they are also not indicative of what most people that I've talked to and that have pulled me over at the coffee shop have said that that's what they think of with Forest Lake. But, again, I wanted to bring that forward, because I know that there have been council members that have been, dragged over at the grocery store, and that there are folks that are kind of saying, well, wait a minute, what was this?
The MXR one is 3 to 6 per acre?
Yeah, the low
Net
to
acre.
medium density
Net
residential.
acre.
Yeah, it would be 3 to 6 units per acre.
Thank you. Kevin?
So, yeah, I was part of, obviously, a lot of us here were part of the whole comprehensive planning and meetings and discussions with the community. I think looking at the benefit of the MXR one, because I think there are benefits.
There are.
I think it gives us the flexibility to approve smaller, more dense sites if we want, but it also gives us the flexibility to say no.
Mm.
Well,
That's not what I'm hearing from staff. They've been saying, as part of MXR1, you need to let folks, they're buying property with the expectation that they'll be able to get this density, and we've been saying, no, we want lower density. You've heard developers say, well, wait a minute, I'm below your standard. I'm below your standard.
but I think, correct me if I'm wrong, Nathan, haven't we been approving that based on PUDs, the smaller density lots, not as the MXR1 approval?
So the base zone in these areas is MXR1.
Correct.
Those standards are, the developers coming in are requesting some deviations to
Correct.
the performance standards in that district.
They are, but
And-
we don't necessarily have to approve that.
Yeah, the approval would be discretionary of those projects. I think what you may be referring to is we've been talking about how there's sort of a gulf between the densities that are guided for in the low to medium density residential areas, which, as Commissioner Young has indicated, is a sizable area of the city. So those areas are guided for a density that the MXR1 zoning district can't quite hit if you build to those standards. So
Right.
that's the gulf, I think, that you may be referring to.
Okay, yeah, you're right. But I think it does allow us some more flexibility.
As long as we push them into PUDs. But that's not where the
When you
city
look at-
attorney is suggesting we are on firm ground with.
Right.
So the attorney is recommending, if I read between the lines, because I never know what an attorney's trying to tell me, but,
They change it when you figure it out anyway.
and Pete's a very smart guy, don't get me wrong, his office is very, very good at what they do, so I have no doubt. So if I understand all right, what they're looking for is that we need to continue our quest of lot size issues and see what new lot size we want to allow versus option B was, let's just bring them all in as PUDs and we'll negotiate it. Is that the bottom line here?
Yeah, I think that he's basically telling you stay with what the zoning tells you and try to stay away from PUDs. Now, if the plan commission wants to change the density or change the, whether it's an 80-foot lot or a 65-foot lot, then yes, I think you're right, is what you're saying.
Because the difficult we have here, right, is that if we're 3 to 6, to get to 6, lot sizes would have to go to something shy of 7,500 square feet, right? Because there's 45,000 roughly square feet in an acre, divided by 6, you end up at about 7,500, give or take. And we have not looked at going that low, and I don't even know how we would squeeze that in with our topography. So, do you have a little guidance for us here? Or
Yeah, I think there are going to be circumstances, especially, Goodview Preserve may be a good example in some ways because there is a very significant amount of wetlands on that site. It splits the site. It creates some challenges to how to design it. So a development like that may be a good example of when a PUD is appropriate. Just granting a PUD to give small lot sizes in some circumstances may not be the best practice. If you, generally speaking, want to communicate a certain amount of flexibility to developers, the best way to do that is to incorporate that into the zoning standards.
But what I'm trying to get to is what lot size is correct here then, because if I'm gonna allow up to 6, but my lot size, let's say, is 10,000 square feet, that only allows 4.5 lots per acre. Gross, not even net.
To your question, the traditional lot size that's required in the MXR1 is fairly large. 15,000 square feet is fairly large. What's the most appropriate lot size? I think that was where this conversation kind of started.
Yeah, so if we would want to move to get closer to 6, if we didn't change the lot size, everything they wanted to come in at less than 15,000 square feet would be a PUD then.
Correct, yeah, if they were, for those traditional single-family lots, the 60% of the units in these developments.
Yeah, so is Pete looking for us to sharpen our pencil and come up with what we want for the lot size minimum? Or is the 15 okay?
Well, what I think he's just really saying is be careful using PUDs. And
We've used a lot of them.
yeah, and if there's a desire to have more density or have 4 lots per acre or 5 lots per acre, whatever the case may be, that we need to somehow, and I don't know if he actually says that, I didn't see that he puts it out there, but I think he's saying, stay away from PUDs and blanket PUDs, just use them over and over and over again, because then zoning means nothing. And then if you want more density, you need to consider what you're going to change.
Or less density.
For less density, yes. Which gets us back to the beginning when we started this conversation, when you had the meeting last September with the developers.
Yes.
So on a normal plat review or a normal sketch review, if someone comes in the MXR1 zoning, if it's a lot size less than 15,000 square feet, we really shouldn't be considering it unless we're considering doing PUDs.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think Nathan.
Unless we change some of that zoning text.
Yeah, I think Nathan made a good point with, you have, a lot that has 30 acres and, a quarter of its wetlands, that may be a point where you want to deviate. But if you have flat tillable land, again, that has no wetlands or
Right.
anything like that, is there a hardship? Is there a reason to use a PUD besides the developer allegedly can't make the money he wants to make?
Right.
So to get up near all these densities, we would need pretty much a split of townhomes versus single family, or some kind of multifamily plus single family, which is where we were a few years ago. Everything was townhouses, and then they were trying to squeeze in a few houses. Now it looks like we've seen a little shift back here to more single-family houses and fewer townhouses.
Yeah, the market definitely is looking for single-family houses or apartments.
There's a lot of interest, and I think we've kind of had ongoing conversations about what types of products are interesting right now in the market. The slab on grade, detached townhome, that's one level, that's senior, kind of like senior housing or downsizing is a product that we hear a lot about. So yeah, to Pat's point, the market does shift, and it seems like it's been shifting towards smaller detached products lately.
And we haven't even had the discussion of, are we building things with mother-in-law apartments? Are we building things with accessory? Are we building things so that you can have a a downstairs walkout apartment, that's 2 dwelling units on a lot, where you've got, we had the family that came in on the large acreage, and they were building for, all of the kids in the family. Well, there was a lot of times when folks don't want to do that on 300 acres, they would like to do that on 2 city lots. And we have not had our discussion on where we would allow those, and does that help us meet the Met Council's desire for us to have significantly more density?
Other comments from commissioners? Susan and I have our say, so don't let us run roughshod. Where would you like to go from here then, Nathan? Go ahead, Geneva. I'm
No,
sorry.
I'm actually taking all of this in because it's providing some clarity about where we came from and where we want to go, and who is the parties that are dictating some of these changes. And, when I hear about the market and getting to smaller housing, I do think we're getting there, and maybe we need to make some adjustments, or maybe the adjustments need to be made to the way we accept things, to the 40-year plan, whatever it is. But that's what I think that's what we should do. We should be having this discussions, flush it out, and do what's really good for the communities as best we can, and that's all you can do.
Doesn't seem like the houses are getting smaller. They just want fewer lots and more crowded together.
Yeah, and when I read this thing about the eyesore, some people do not consider that an eyesore, they at all. And that's why I think we do need to respond that in a professional and as diplomatic way as we can, that we, each other, are not the only person, and the way we see it doesn't make it right for everyone else. And that's why I do think it's important to respond, because this person and 100 more people might feel like he or she does. But then there's gonna be a lot of people who also think, well, I want that kind of living, because if I didn't, I wouldn't be buying it, and they wouldn't be building it. So somebody wants it. I don't think that the builders are necessarily jamming things down the consumer's throat. It's usually a consumer-driven industry that they're providing the consumer with what they'll buy. Otherwise, they wouldn't build it. So there's gotta be a need for some of these things that other people think are an eyesore.
Well, and we notify, all the residents around
Right.
any project that comes in, and they have access to the websites, and they can, come to any of the meetings and tell us what they think.
Yeah, and in most
Ultimately, we
cases, it's
still-
after the fact.
Well, no, not at this point.
Well, yeah,
On an individual basis.
It's after the fact if the plat's approved.
there you go.
Kevin, are you seeing that a lot of the buyers now are first-time buyers? And they really can't get that larger lot that they are gonna want when they've got some kids, or, that right now, because of the price of things, this is what a first-time buyer can afford. And my concern is, what is this housing stock, what's gonna happen to it when all these first-time home buyers are gone and they want bigger stuff?
I don't know if it's, I guess personal opinion, I don't know if it's what they can afford or what they can't afford. It's, when you look around the country and you look in places like, let's just say California, Arizona, Florida, places where there's a lot of people moving to and moving away from, they're small home sites. Land is precious commodity, even though you can go out to California and you could find all kinds of empty land, right?
Yep.
They wanna be in town but it seems like the younger generation today isn't looking for a lot of maintenance. They're not looking for a lot of yard work, right? They're busy, right? They have busy schedules, they're running all over like all of us did, but it was a little different. And it just seems like, you know, a lot of them don't even wanna shovel snow or cut their grass. You know, you see a lot of these newer projects all having associations, that take care of a lot of that. You know, you see more community pools and community centers and things. But, it's a factor of the cost of the land. You know, a homeowner or a landowner wants to sell their land and make as much money as they can, just like anybody would, right? And a developer wants to buy land for as cheap as they can, because they know they have to put a price on it to sell it. And when you look at the developing costs of what it costs to develop land, and then you look at the cost of what it costs to buy the land, and then you look at the cost today of building the houses, it's expensive. And, you know, the average sale price today is around $380,000. There's a lot of people that can't afford that. And that's why apartments are so demanding today and so desirable today. And then you look at, you know, a startup house. Well, what we've been seeing lately is what we call, you know, a lot of cases startup houses, but they're still $450,000, and that's kind of your starter price range. No matter if it's in this community or another community nearby, and then you go to some of the other communities and it's even more money, so. Smaller lots has afforded that value to come down, or that price to come down, and so people can still afford it. Now, of course, you got the other thing going on, right? Interest rates going up, inflation happening, costs of everything higher, so prices are, you know, even again being questioned. So, yeah, this is pretty common everywhere you see it, and the smaller home sites are what we're seeing in almost every community.
Supply and demand.
It is, it's all about that, and like I mentioned to you earlier, there's just not enough houses.
Well, we've had those contractors come in here and tell us, you know, hey, we are looking for, you know, when we come up with our sizes and stuff for the apartments and condos and stuff, they're like, people don't want them that big. They're
Right.
asking for smaller.
Right.
And so, you know, we have to adapt to that.
Yeah, it's a different time. That's personal opinion.
We got a lot of those on the commission.
Yeah.
The only other options I think that you need possibly to look at, and we would have to look at this a little better, is do you want to look at changing the zoning for some of, out of MXR1 to, if you want more dense, to MXR2 or MXR3, or if you want less dense, to your single family? And how much of that is appropriate versus how much is that desired? And, I mean, you can do that. I mean, you can start to take a look at, and I don't know what they did when they switched all the comprehensive plan. It wasn't, so I'm not sure what was identified as single family, but if you want a discussion on having a less dense development, try to identify those areas where that needs to be, or more dense development, identify, for example, the Headwaters is a huge PUD, so
Yeah.
somebody identified that should have this standard. I think it's 65-foot lots, I'm not sure, but, so they said, okay, this area should be more dense.
Right.
So if you want to move that way, we can look at, or the committee can look at, do you want to put less density here, more, I mean, it's, and I don't know if you need comp plan amendments for that or not, but that's something else you can approach.
I'm not looking to, by the way, I have it's right next to my front door. I have the Headwaters big thing. I need a dumpster. I need an enormous dumpster,
I'm not saying a word.
and well, somebody's gonna want that someday. What I don't understand is why the developers are coming into the MXRs that have nothing on them and are leaving alone the Headwaters that's already got the streets and the infrastructure in the freaking ground. Help me with that. I don't get it.
I have no idea what is in the developer's mind. The only thing I could think of is that there's more profit in one place than there is the other. Not sure, but, or the landowner is more willing to sell than another landowner. I don't know why they do that. I can't begin to explain that.
Yeah. I mean, it save a lot of pain and strain. can get a dense development that's essentially laid out and approved, and the stuff is in the ground already.
Well, that kind of leads me to believe if we already have places there that they can build the size lots that they want to, why do we even go through the motions of granting variances? Just say, you've got perfectly good property over there, go try to make a deal with someone. I mean, why do we, if we have guidelines, we should really try to stick by the guidelines as best we can. If we need to make adjustments, then we should make them. But I don't know if they should be at the behest of any particular builder or any particular individual. They should always be at the best interests of the community and the overall plan. And it almost sounds like what we're doing is we're designating land to be something, and then somebody wants to buy it, and that's when the request is, we want to do something else with it than what you said we could. That seems like that's a lot of the discussions here. So, I understand the need to dedicate land to certain uses, but maybe that's not a practical way to do things. I don't know. Seems like we're always fixing something to get the next buyer. That's kind of what it seems like. Maybe I'm wrong.
So commissioners, where would you like to go on this topic? Review a number of the zones, make sure we all understand them, look at lot sizes some more. The city is looking for some direction here.
I'd like a discussion with the city council at some point to say, you know, hey, what are you hearing from your constituents visioning is where the MXR is, and is that what you want for the long term of the community? That's what I would really appreciate, is for the policy folks to tell us where their vision and how they want this done. Some of them know the story of like my dad used to tell me about midnight requisitioning, only this was midnight rezoning.
We will talk to the mayor about that issue and see what we think.
And the council member kind of heard where we're at.
I still think though we should maybe do a little refresher next time with Nathan on the zoning map and what's allowed in each of those zones to get a little better flavor. You know, we talk about, to Geneva's point, we talk about developments as to problems arise with it, but maybe we should take a half step back and say, this is what's allowed currently, or what we have, and do we even think it's the right? So if we could maybe put that on our next agenda. You know, Nathan's always good about having a map and then some write-up to go with it, so.
Well, you know, honestly, I myself would like to have a bigger map that kind of plots all that, so I'm not looking at a tiny screen. Because when you look at that tiny screen, you don't really have a good idea of what's around it. And then you know, and the cursor is moving, which is okay, but I need to have reference points around me and what else is around that. And that'll help me a lot better understand where these roads are coming in and what's already business and what's already residential, and I'll be able to see what is and what we plan right next to each other instead of this tiny little screen.
How big of a map do you want?
Well, no, you don't have a copy of the comp plan, do you?
Yeah, there used to be a.
I have a copy of the comp plan, but what I don't have is a map that I can look at.
There was a big fold-out map in the comp plan.
Oh, then I probably don't have that because I looked at something that was probably very
Hey,
small and concise.
The spirals don't have the big map.
Don't they have the fold-out? I've got to go back and look.
But that would be very
Maybe we could get a
helpful.
couple of,
Yeah, we could provide a zoning map.
11 by 17 would be helpful.
Well, we can make it 36 by 24 if you want. Ooh, we got
I
a
didn't be able
lot,
to use
so-
it.
give us a couple of D size would be great.
Yeah, we'll find something for you.
Bigger glasses with them.
3 by 5.
And can that just have like the color codings for the way things
Yeah,
currently?
in the zoning map, it should have the color coding on it already.
Yeah, we could do with the zoning map and the future land use map, so you can look at them and compare.
Yeah, I think it's important to see both the future land use and the zoning map, because we do have to meet sooner or later change the zoning to meet the future comp plan, which we are working on now, so.
And that's a requirement that we have to do.
Well, yeah.
We have to get them to align.
Okay, so you just answered your question.
Any other last comments for city tonight? Are you guys good?
I think we have some general direction. I think, you know, what I heard from you is you're looking for sort of a refresher on some of the various residential zoning districts, what the standards are in those districts. I think it might be helpful to look at the MXR1, but also look at the single family and then the MXR2 and 3.
And where they are.
Correct, yep. So, and what those districts permit, and then also kind of take a look at the future land use map and look at how the land in the city is guided, generally speaking.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll move
And we
on.
could invite the council members to that meeting.
Go easy. We'll move on to other. We'll start with Councilperson Munson, if she has any comments for us.
I don't have an update for you, but I think it would be a good idea for the council to have a kind of a refresher on this as well, just because there's another council member that's newer, and I think it would be beneficial. It's been a long time since that conversation in September, and we're right back where we started.
Questions for our esteemed council person? Thank you.
Budget
Nathan?
season's coming up.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what.
Budget season's coming up.
Oh, budget. Yes.
It is, it always comes up quickly.
It's only March. You know, it's a year-round thing.
Nathan?
I think you've seen this kind of stuff that we're working on lately here, so a lot of development review, a lot of, but, you know, good thing to have to deal with is a lot of interest in development in the city. So that's what we're seeing, and we're continuing to work with folks on various proposals. So that's really the only update that I have.
Do you expect our next meeting to be full?
You know, actually, the next meeting, I don't know that we would have any items for that. I need to double check. The second meeting in April, I do expect to have at least one item on. That would be the Teets Farm subdivision. You've seen the concept plan for that. It's the 4-unit one.
Patrick?
Just one item. Most of you know we're looking for a community development director. The council authorized a position last October. We will make a recommendation on Monday to the council to hire an individual, which I'll wait to divulge on Monday, so.
All righty. Would you like to add anything?
No, I would not. Thank you, though. Thanks for
I was gonna
asking.
let you go right by if you looked over here, but. Geneva?
Is the planning commission strictly limited to new planning, or do they ever talk about a plan for updating or maintaining existing buildings and what can be done to help improve our community as a whole with buildings that are starting to become maybe a bit of a problem?
You been involved in the downtown plan?
Not a lot.
Those, that's a lot of work on buildings that have become a bit of a problem. And so,
So there is
Oh, yeah.
like appropriate committee for that, like in general for things around the city that, you know, things when they're new, we put them through a lot of hoops, lots and lots and lots of them. But if we have things that are starting to become a problem or troublesome, is there a way to address those issues so our city maintains its beauty as we go into the 40 and 50 and 60 years?
Like historic preservation.
Well, that too.
No, it would,
You mean-
it-
Do you mean like house, you mean like homes and businesses that are
Homes
falling
and
apart?
businesses and-
People aren't cutting their grass, the weeds,
Yeah, that
things
kind
like that.
Mhm.
there's some enforcement that we have when we get those complaints, but what you're really talking about is a property maintenance ordinance. And that's,
we don't have that.
good luck.
No, we don't want that.
Well, not only do we not have that, but the city got rid of all of its inspectors.
That's correct.
So we don't do that.
But, you know, property maintenance, a property maintenance ordinance, in my experience, and I've done a few of those, is very involved, very controversial, and then very hard to enforce, and very hard to get compliance because you then have to go to court and you put a house that didn't.